So Dr. Joe Vitale, welcome to the show.
Hey, I've been looking forward to this moment. Thanks for having me, Will.
You and me both. So let's just start with, you have done some incredible things in your life. You really have, and you have embraced the law of attraction in some phenomenal ways. I mean, over 70 books written. You've been in multiple films. You've got music albums that you've written. There's some phenomenal things that you've done, and we're going to be hearing about some of those shortly. But what I'm always curious to learn, and I'm obsessed with learning, what's the difference that makes the difference with people? You know, when people are achieving great things, they haven't just stumbled across it. And particularly people that work in this space, that are sharing that wisdom, they've typically had a bit of a journey. And I would love to know a bit about yours, because now you've got a fantastic life doing some great things. But I know it wasn't always quite like that. There was a period of time where I remember saying you were homeless and sort of 10 years of poverty. So can we kind of go back and learn how you even got into doing the work that you're doing now?
Well, somebody asked me a while back how I fell into self-help and how did I become a self-help author. And the easiest answer is I needed help. Mm-hmm. I needed help. The very first person I was using self-help for was me. So I've been reading the self-help literature, success literature, metaphysical literature ever since I was 16 years old. And I'm at this point in time 67 years old. So it's been for quite a while. I also knew I wanted to be an author early on, but I was not in any way, shape, or form an overnight success. I have learned, and I'm sure you've seen this too, Will, that most people that are an overnight success took about 30 years to get there. They just suddenly show up on the horizon, and the rest of us think, oh, they're a success overnight. Well, no, it took decades, and it took decades for me. As you mentioned, I was homeless in Dallas, Texas. I was in poverty in Houston, Texas. But the things that made the difference for me, because I like that little opening line that you said about the things that make a difference that actually help people get results. I would say the first is I have taken phenomenal action. That whenever there's an idea, I leap on it. Whenever there's a passion, I go for it. Whenever there's a curiosity or an inner fire inside of me, I explore it. And I've pretty much been like that since I was a kid. Part of that came from the books I was reading, because I was reading biographies of great people. Well, they all took action. Nothing was happening until they took action. So nothing would happen in my life until I took action. That's the first thing. But there's an essential thing that I also did that virtually nobody talks about. There may be a few talking about it now because I've made it my mission to get this out there. And it's the idea of what I'm calling the missing secret. The missing secret is the subconscious limiting beliefs that are operating need to be cleared in order for us to achieve the things we're taking action on. In other words, and you're nodding your head, so you know this very well, and you've interviewed enough people that you've probably heard similar stories, that you can take all the action you want. But until you clear up your internal belief system, the actions you take could be self-sabotage. They could be designed for failure, not consciously designed for failure. I never set out to be homeless. I never set out to be in poverty. I never set out to have 30 years of struggle, but I did not know the subconscious operating beliefs at play. And all of us have them. So whatever field I went into, whether it was movies or music or books or speaking, I always had limiting beliefs, always. And every one of those fields. The difference is that I learned how to eliminate them. And when I eliminated them, then you just race down the road and you can manifest pretty much at warp speed. So that's kind of like an overview with a lesson or two.
Yeah, no, sure. So like you say, so you're in that situation, like you said, homeless in I'm going to get it the wrong way around, homeless in Dallas, in poverty in Houston, and then you stumble across personal development and self-help and started helping yourself. What was the first piece of sort of, I don't know, was it a book or was it a seminar you went to? What was it that you did?
You got to remember that this was back in the 1970s, so there is no internet. There isn't any YouTube, there's no Facebook, and we don't see any of that coming. It's nowhere near on the horizon. So I couldn't go there. The big thing that always helped me and still helps me today, and you can look behind me and see the influence, are books. And so I always went to the library. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a very small town with a very big library. Niles, Ohio had a famous library because one of our presidents had been born in Niles, and they had a William McKinley Memorial Library. And it was phenomenal for a kid. I would walk there, which was 1.5 miles away, and I would go and absorb all those books. And when I was homeless, I lived in the Dallas Public Library. And literally was living there because they had a bathroom, they had air conditioning, they had water, and they had books. And so books have always been my guides, my friends, my saviors, my allies, my awakeners. And so I read the key cornerstone books: Think and Grow Rich, The Magic of Believing, The Art of How to Win Friends and Influence People, The Science of Getting Rich. I read all of those books as I was homeless.
Mm.
It's interesting, as you're interviewing me right now, I was just interviewed a couple of days ago for the Think and Grow Rich magazine, which is going to put me on the cover. And so I thought how ironic this was, because when I was homeless, I read Think and Grow Rich, and I thought I was thinking to grow rich, but I was homeless and I was in poverty for another 10 years. And as I told the people that are behind the magazine, Napoleon Hill's work influenced me. It influences everybody. It's wonderful material. But Think and Grow Rich is almost a sales letter for a longer and bigger course that he wrote later on. And I didn't have the bigger course. I didn't have that available to me. So I had to stumble my way doing this all by myself, no mentors, no coaching. Coaching wasn't known as a business back then, unless you were a little league coach or a football coach. There were not personal development coaches. At least I never heard of any, and I couldn't afford any. So to answer your question, books. And books kept directing me to my own mind. The Magic of Believing was a book that deeply influenced me, still does today. I've read it a dozen or maybe 20 times, and I have autographed editions of it now. It came out of the 1950s, and Claude Bristol, the author, kept saying, once you can believe it with integrity and see it, it was going to happen. And I kept wrestling with that. And again, I'm stumbling, trying to learn it on my own. But books have been my guides and my friends.
I love that. And for me too, these days, like you say, we've got audio, we've got YouTube and various other things, and I listen to a lot of books. But it makes a big difference. I listen to many of your books, read many of your books. There was something that you mentioned there that I just want to touch on, because you said that you read Think and Grow Rich, as many people did, and there's a lot of take The Secret, for example. A lot of people say, well, The Secret just says just think it and then it's going to happen, which you and I both know isn't the case. You've mentioned action. You do mention it in the film about taking action, so people seem to just skip over that part, right? But for some reason, I don't know, very cleverly marketed, people seem to think that there was action not mentioned, but it was mentioned. And even in the word law of attraction, part of the word is action, right? So
Exactly.
it's definitely the case. But you mentioned about sort of subconscious mind.
Yes.
And you mentioned clearing, and this is what I think is really interesting, because a lot of people, they go, but I'm doing the work. I'm visualizing it, and we'll get onto visualization later. But I'm visualizing. I'm doing the affirmations. I'm writing my goals. I've done the vision board, but they're still not getting what they want. So can we just talk a little bit about that and what clearing is, if that's okay?
Glad to, because this is what I had to discover in my own life, and then end up teaching other people. I actually came out with an audio program a couple of years after the movie The Secret had come out, because like you, I had heard so many people who wanted The Secret to work, who tried to make it work, but ended up being critical and being skeptical. So I created an audio program called The Missing Secret. And The Missing Secret is the #1 selling audio program for Nightingale Conant, which is the company that brought it out, because it tied into the movie and it filled in the gap. And the gap is this idea that the results you're getting aren't directly based on what you're consciously thinking. They're based on what you're subconsciously thinking. So people can sit there and go, I visualized the new car, I visualized the romance, and I wrote my affirmations, and I put up a vision board, but it didn't happen. That's because there was static in the subconscious mind. I have found that if you want money and you don't have any limiting beliefs about money, you're going to attract money. If you want money and you find out what the limiting beliefs are and you clear them, now you can attract the money. The idea of clearing, and there's a lot of techniques around this, is the idea of clearing up the baggage, the limitations, the belief systems, the mental paradigm, the scarcity mindset that's in the subconscious mind. We're always getting what we subconsciously believe and expect. I'm going to repeat that. It's so good. We're always getting what we subconsciously believe and expect. So if we want something different and we think we're making all the right changes, we haven't gone deep enough. And that's, if there's a problem with the movie The Secret, it's that. But I defend the movie and say, look, it's only a movie, people. It's an hour and a half to 2 hours designed to introduce you to a concept. And that's it. There should have been a secret part 2, which I've been waiting for 15 years. But she never came out with that. And so I think that's the missing secret, is that you have to get clear of the limiting beliefs. Once you do, you can have what you want.
So what we're saying is, I know you're saying about the secret 2, but really it should have been sort of the secret 1. It should have been the first part is you need to clear your baggage. And
right.
then part 2 is you do the law of attraction work. So if someone right now, because I don't think we've even mentioned what the law of attraction actually is, so we'll come to that in a minute, but based on the fact that we said it in that order, if they're subconscious limiting beliefs, A, where do they come from? And B, how do you get rid of them?
Well, we absorb them. We absorb them quite innocently. When we're born, we're not necessarily blank slates, because we do have DNA, we do have epigenetics, we do have influence in our heredity that we're born with. But for the most part, our personality begins to be developed from birth on to about 5 years old to some say 7 years old. During that time, you're absorbing everything around you, primarily the caretakers for you. So your mother, your father, babysitter, the neighbors, the culture you're in, the country that you're in, the religion you're brought up in, the educational system, the media, the TV's playing in the background when you're a baby, or the radio or the internet these days. And as you're laying there, totally plastic, totally available to whatever the programming is, you are absorbing all this information. This information is not abundance thinking. By and large, what we're absorbing is scarcity and fear-based mentalities. And that's because the people who are raising us had absorbed the same thing. And most likely they never had an awakening. Most likely they never got to the point where they saw the movie The Secret or they read a book from success literature. They were probably struggling to survive just about like everybody else. Now, for the people watching your show, the people that are tuning into this and listening to this, they're in a much better place, because more of our parents have awakened, more of the people around us are listening to this material, reading the right material, learning how to expand their mind. But to answer your question, we're programmed. We're programmed early on. I remember when I was a kid, and of course at this point I'm conscious enough to know what I'm hearing, and I remembered it. But my father said, "Hey, you want to know the best way to double your money?" And he said, "Fold it over and put it back in your pocket." And I remember thinking, oh, my dad's so smart. That's how you double your money. You don't spend it, you fold it over, put it in your pocket. It wasn't until years later, after I go through poverty and homelessness and start to question my beliefs and where they came from, that I realized my father's statement, as funny as it sounded, was actually a statement of scarcity and limitation. And then when you look deeper, he was born in 1925 in America, which meant when he was 5 years old, that country, America, was hit with the Great Depression. He was branded at the age of 5 with a scarcity mindset. He never let it go. He lived to be 93 years old. And I remember he was wearing a t-shirt one time that had holes in it. And I said, "Dad, would you let me buy you a t-shirt?" And he said, "Nothing wrong with this one. It's still good." Because his mindset was still locked in. Well, I absorbed that mindset, which is one of the reasons I was going through poverty and homelessness, until I had my own awakening because of the work I was doing on myself through the books that I was reading from the Dallas Public Library and other libraries to help me break free of that. So where do these come from? We absorb them innocently. Nobody's sitting there trying to brainwash us. They're just being themselves. They're just living their lives out of their own limiting beliefs, which we absorbed. That's the first answer to your question. The second is, that's where we have to do the work. We have to question our own beliefs. We have to listen to what we're telling ourselves internally in our brain with that little voice that's always speaking. And we have to listen to when we talk to other people. When we start explaining why things are happening in a certain way or not happening in a certain way, we're actually revealing what our beliefs are. But most of the time we don't pay attention. We just say, oh, that's the way it is, or it's always been that way for me. And we keep talking. I'm encouraging people to pause and hear yourself. Because when you say things like, well, it's always been that way, or if you're trying to date and you say, well, all the good ones are taken, or if you're trying to make money and you say, money is evil or money is bad, or the only way to make money is to be corrupt, those are beliefs. Those aren't facts. Those aren't truths. Those are beliefs. And as soon as we start to hear them, we can pause and go, well, wait a minute, is that actually true? You may find examples of people living like that, but is that a true fact across the board? And no, money actually has no beliefs around it. Money's neutral, money's innocent, money's energy, money's nothing until we agree to what it can be used for. So, Will, there's a lot to the clearing process, and there's lots of different techniques to do it. But to me, that's the essence to breaking free. That's the only way for us to awaken, is that we have to look for, find, and release the limiting beliefs.
And it's interesting you say that, because one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, so it was actually it was you really that introduced me to the, so I can't remember the first book of yours that I read. It might have been The Attractor Factor, it might have been Expect Miracles. I can't remember which one it was that was the first of yours, and I've read many of them. And then that eventually led me to Zero Limits, because you just said that that we need to find the limiting beliefs. But I believe I'm also right in saying sometimes we don't need to find them, because we can use the process of Ho'oponopono to clear them without even realizing what they are and not being conscious of them. I believe I'm right in saying. Is that correct?
No, you are exactly right. You do not need to name the beliefs or articulate the beliefs or pinpoint the beliefs specifically. I usually say in a sweeping statement, we need to find what the beliefs are and erase them. And that's, a soundbite that I've learned to give. But if we want to go deeper, which is what you do, which is what I so love about what you do for your audience, when we go deeper, we start to find techniques where, no, you don't need to know the specific beliefs. You just need to know you're unhappy, or you're unsatisfied, or you're angry, or you're impatient. You know that something is blocking the results that should be yours, that should be happening. There's no reason for them not to be happening unless there's some sort of invisible block. So as long as you have the sense that there's something off or something in you that can be erased, you can use a technique like Ho'oponopono. Ho'oponopono is the Hawaiian spiritual technique that entirely takes place inside of you by saying 4 key phrases. You can't see all of my shirt, but I have the 4 phrases on my shirt. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. Sounds ridiculously, stupidly simple. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. But those 4 phrases, you say them inside yourself while you're feeling whatever your concern is, your frustration, your hunch that there's a limiting belief happens to be. And you're saying them to your connection to, some people say divinity, some people say God, some people say universe. I, these days, have been calling it the great something. It's a higher power that we're connected to. It's in us and we're in it. So we're saying these 4 phrases as a kind of prayer, as a kind of petition. So we're feeling like, I'm doing everything to attract money, but the money's not coming. I'm frustrated. Or I'm doing everything to attract my soulmate, but he or she isn't showing up. I'm frustrated. I want my health to be better, and I'm doing everything. I'm visualizing, affirming, doing all the things we hear about doing that Secret talks about, other success teachers talk about, but I'm not getting better. Something's wrong. That feeling of something off, something wrong, the frustration, that's in us. And that's what we want to clear. We don't need to know specifically what the beliefs are that are creating it. We just need to know we got something there. There is something lodged in us that we want to release. So as we're feeling it, and as we pretend we called up God, we're saying, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. You don't say it out loud. You don't say it to another person. You can say it in whatever order you like. You can say it with feeling or without feeling. But this little process that's called Ho'oponopono, Will, I have heard and seen so many, by God, miracles because of it, that it's breathtaking. You mentioned my book, Zero Limits, which was the book that brought this to the masses. And then 10 years later, I wrote a book called At Zero that had even more insights and more philosophy and more technique and more stories of people who have gone through using this and had miracles. And then most recently, I came out with a book called The Fifth Phrase. And that's because of the work I had done in Ho'oponopono. I received the fifth phrase. The four phrases, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, have been around for a long time. The fifth phrase is so powerful, I revealed it at an event, and a woman there who had been doing Ho'oponopono for a long time came up and said, that fifth phrase is so powerful, it eliminates the need for the previous four.
Wow.
And I wrote about that in my latest book called The Fifth Phrase. All of this is the answer to your question. No, you do not need to know a specific belief. If you do, great. There's other tools you could use. You can question the belief if you happen to be able to articulate it. But if you can't, Ho'oponopono was one of the many tools available to ride the rescue with.
But before we find out what the fifth phrase is, I just want to talk, because I'm aware of, like you said, there's many, many incredible stories of where it's been used, but there's one in particular that stands out in my mind to do with, I want to say sort of a mental hospital, but I could be wrong in that. Was it a mental hospital?
Mental hospital for the criminally insane.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So
yeah, and that was where yes, I mean, it wasn't just a hospital, it wasn't just a mental hospital. This was a mental hospital for criminally insane people. And I shake when I talk about it, because I did do all the research, including talking to the people who worked at that hospital and finding the therapist who had helped heal the mentally ill criminals at that hospital, and writing the book Zero Limits, which tells the story. In short, there was a mental hospital for the criminally insane. It was a state hospital in Hawaii. And it was so hellish that the inmates, being as violent and unpredictable as they were sedated or shackled every day. And the doctors, the nurses that worked there hated it so much they kept quitting. So the turnover was staggering. And the state hospital needed to have a licensed therapist there in order to get their funding. And finally, they accepted an oddball therapist who said, look, I'm going to do my own brand of therapy, and I'm not even going to work directly with the patients, but I'll be there on staff. And this was the man who used Ho'oponopono to help heal those mentally ill criminals. And it's important to realize, I always have to make sure people understand this. He was not talking to them. He was not doing traditional therapy with them. He was not prescribing anything to them. He wasn't giving them timeouts or punishment or restraint. He didn't do any of that stuff. The one thing he did was work on himself. And this story is relevant for anybody going through anything, because we always want to give our power away and say, if only my spouse changed, if only my employer changed, if only the pandemic went away, if only the government did this. That's not how Ho'oponopono works. Ho'oponopono says you are 100% responsible for everything in your life experience. Then when you really stop and look at it, everything in your life experience takes place inside of you. So this therapist is looking at all of these patients, because he can see them wandering around, and he sees their charts, and he's got his feelings. He's embarrassed, he's enraged, he's angry, he's going through all kinds of stuff. But instead of venting it, he goes inside and he does, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, to his connection to, he would use the word divinity. And as he did that, he's diluting his feelings inside himself. So where he was upset, the more he said, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, the more he quieted inside himself, which was the whole point. He's trying to get clear. He's trying to get clear in him. As he does, those patients start getting better. Within a few months, they weren't shackled or sedated. A few months after that, some of them were pronounced healthy and normal and released. During this time, the other doctors and nurses, the staff said, we don't know what you're doing, but whatever it is, do it for us too. And then he would teach them about Ho'oponopono. Within 4 years, that entire ward was closed. I had heard the story much like you, and I dismissed it at first, but then it gnawed at me, and I kept thinking, if this is true, then somebody needs to tell the world. Because if a man can heal an entire ward of mentally ill criminals, which most of us would give up on, how much power do we have in our little domain with our little problems and our little conflicts and our little issues? If he can do that, what can we do? And that's what led to me writing Zero Limits, which I wrote with the therapist, Dr. Hulen.
So for people listening to that for the first time, that maybe listen to my podcast or they've been suggested by someone to come and listen to this, they're going to just go, okay, well, what's the science behind it? You know, I don't get it. Like, it just sounds too good to be true. What is it about doing that process, or the doctor did on himself, that meant that others healed in terms of the science element of it?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because, you know, like you and like so many people, we want to have science as a great God in our lives to prove what we believe. So the first answer is there have been scientifically done statements or experiments on the use of Ho'oponopono. One of them in particular, they used it with people who had high blood pressure. All the people did was the Ho'oponopono, all their blood pressure is lower. Another one, and this one I knew personally, was a warden at a prison. And one group of prisoners was using Ho'oponopono. So it was a kind of a meditation class. In fact, I think they called it meditation because they couldn't call it Ho'oponopono in the prison system. Nobody understood what that was. So they labeled it, oh, we're just going to do meditation, but they're actually doing Ho'oponopono. And a riot broke out. And the guards and everybody is flying around, you know, there's chaos going to all the different rooms. But when they get to the room of the people doing Ho'oponopono, they're all Buddhas. They're all sitting there totally calm and quiet. And they just close the door and leave them alone. It's like that's the only place in the entire prison where there is experiencing peace. As for going deeper than that and trying to explain that on some level, our inner energy is sending out vibrations that is changing the world around us, I don't know how to explain that. What I can point at is that Buddha and a whole lot of neuroscience and a whole lot of some of the modern scientific experiments are proving that the outer reality doesn't even exist. It's an illusion. It's a projection of actually what's going on. When we dissect it, and some of the scientists say, well, what you're seeing on the outside is actually upside down and inverted, and your brain and your eye is doing some sort of mirror technique, like you're in a mirror funhouse, to make it look like it's right side up and normal to your brain. But in actuality, it isn't. So we can start going down dark corners and philosophical journeys. To me, I think this is the bottom line for me, Will. I'm a results guy. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an action guy. If I don't get results, I don't pursue it. So when I look at Ho'oponopono, when somebody says, where's the proof? I'm like, go read Zero Limits, go read At Zero, go read the Fifth Phrase, go on YouTube, look at the various sites, look at the average people telling you about healing lifetime health problems and lifetime relationship issues and this, that, and the other. And if after all of that, you still want to sit there and go, yeah, but where's the science? Then you should go down the hall to somebody else.
A guy you know very well is a mentor of mine and someone I regard as a friend is Dr. John DeMartini.
Yes, I've known John for decades.
And
yes,
he said to me once, he said, well, a miracle is just something that we can't explain yet. And a lot of people say, well, it's a miracle. Well, if 150 years ago we saw planes flying in the way we do now, we go, that's a miracle. How's that happening? If we saw Ferraris driving down the road at 200 miles an hour, 150 years ago, people would be like, that's something from out of this world. It's just something we can't explain yet. And I think that's something that's so important. And sometimes, like you said, we've become so obsessed with science of having to prove it. Just because we don't know how it works doesn't mean it can't be done. Like for me personally, I use electricity every day. I go and flick on a switch and all of a sudden the light turns on. I don't know how electricity works, but it works, and I can prove that it I think.
Well, again, I'm looking for results. I really think, and let's look at this for one more second, because I think somebody who is saying, I don't want to do it without the science, or I'm looking for more proof, that's a form of self-sabotage. What you and I are talking about are techniques and methods that help people. There is no reason not to go and apply this and find out if it actually helps you in your life or not. How easy is it to say, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, inside of yourself? I mean, it doesn't cost anything, doesn't take any time. Give it a shot. But if somebody is sitting there and says, nope, I'm smarter than that, I need the science first. Well, you are delaying your own happiness. You're delaying your own peace. You're delaying your own well-being because you think that there needs to be proof, where in reality, science doesn't actually prove anything. What I mean by that is there's a whole school of science that is trying to prove God exists. There is a whole school of science that is trying to prove God does not exist. Science takes sides all the time. I used to subscribe to Psychology Today magazine because, like so many people, I was fascinated by the recent scientific studies. But if you watch the magazine long enough and you pay attention to the scientific research going on all the time, you find out they conflict each other. One research study will say, well, according to this, we found out that doing blah, 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 drinking coconut juice is going to help you do this. A little later, different study, different people in the study, oh, we found out that coconut juice actually increases your blood pressure. And it's like, wait a minute, which one's true? And this is one of my bottom line methods or insights. And that is, we live in an optical illusion. You get what you believe. If you want scientific evidence to prove Ho'oponopono works, you'll go find it. If you want scientific evidence to prove Ho'oponopono doesn't work, you'll find it. It's available out there because there are people in both camps. There are people who are die-hard raving fans. And there are people going, there's not enough proof, there's no real evidence for the story, I don't really believe it, how come nobody else knows about this? And they'll just clash. What are you left with? You're left with choice. If you would like to believe, go on over here with the people gathering all the evidence for proof. If you don't want to believe, go on over here for all the evidence of people that are saying it doesn't work. But what's the real truth? It's entirely up to you.
So before we move on, number 5, what is it?
Oh, you got to read my book for that one. It would take too long to explain. If I just blurted out the 5th phrase, it would be too easy to dismiss it. So I don't usually do this, Will, but I'm going to be a bit of a tough love person, saying you've heard enough from me, from Will, and about Ho'oponopono. If you're curious, it's on Amazon, the 5th phrase.
There we go. All right, good stuff. So what I would like to talk to a little bit before, I've actually got some questions from people in our community that I'm going to put to you around the law of attraction. I want to talk a little bit about attracting money as well, because obviously Attract Money Now is one of your books, and The Secret to Attracting Money is a lot of things that you've done around money. And I don't want to make this whole podcast about money because it's not all about money, but money played a big role in my story. I've got an uncle that's a billionaire. I've got an uncle that's a multi-millionaire, and my dad used to grow up saying they just got lucky, and then a whole load of things happened. And people that have listened to the podcast, you can go, if you want to hear the whole story, go back to one of the first podcasts, you can hear about it. And so I grew up with this belief that money equaled happiness, and I went off on a tangent thinking money equaled happiness, and money's played a big role in my career. And then I had a big realization that actually that wasn't what it was really about, and it was something much deeper than that. And that set me on this trajectory, sort of doing the work I've been doing now for many years. But for people that are using the law of attraction and it's just not working for them. So we've already established that it's that they've maybe got they've got some sort of subconscious belief that's going on, and they can use clearing to get rid of it. But what I'm interested to know from you is that, is it possible that the law of attraction can bring challenge into people's life? And what I mean by that is that if I'll speak personally, right? So I've got a big mission. I want to empower 1 billion people to transform excuses into results and live a life they love, to benefit themselves, their family, their friends, their community, society, humanity. And awesome. I'll be the first to admit that the last few years, as a result of certain decisions I've made, I've had some challenging times, let's say, right? And what I'm a big believer in is that life happens for you, not to you. So as much as those things are against my desire and expectation, I see them in the respect of, well, it's happening for me to get me to where I kind of want to be. But what's your opinion on that? And how do people go about using the law of attraction without having to go through maybe the challenging times to get to where they want, or can they not do that?
That's such a great question, Will. I get so many interviews that I do that are on the superficial side. And I love that you're going for, you're deep diving here. So I want to be of the most help as I can to your audience. And so I'm just going to be blunt. The very first thing that I tell people is law of attraction is like law of gravity. It's working for you. If you're not getting what you want, you have to look at your subconscious beliefs. So we're going to put that out there and leave it on the table for right now. One of the things that I think trips up the law of attraction newbies is the belief, and I'm saying belief, that once they apply law of attraction, their life will be rosy, their life will be easy, everything will happen with bunny rabbits and ice cream, and money will rain from the sky, and there won't be any dark days, there won't be any dark nights, and you will not have any bumps in the road. Because as soon as somebody has that belief and they start using the law of attraction and the next day it rains, or there was a disappointment, those are the people who quit. Those are the people who say, this shit doesn't work. Those are the people who get critical and they get skeptical. So what I have found is we're human. We are going through the human experience. The human experience includes ups and downs. We are all going to be challenged in some way, shape, or form as we go through life. How we look at that is going to depend on our, again, choice. We can look at it as a bad thing, and then, of course, it's not going to serve us at all. But we can look at it as a good thing. And this is why your question is so good, because it gives me a chance to talk about this for a second and hopefully help a lot of people who might have wrestled with the issue of everything needing to be okay because they're working on themselves, or they're doing self-help, or they visualize peace and prosperity, but yet they don't quite have it, or they've had some disappointments. What I've learned is that a lot of the challenges, whether it is you with your noble big mission, or me and some of the things that I've been trying to do in my life, are there to develop latent powers within you. I'm pausing for that to sink in. So instead of thinking, well, I just want to get up and go collect my money at the post office, or look in my bank account and there was a passive income wired to me. When some of the things don't work out for us, it isn't to stop us, it is to develop us. So let me go further, and I'm going to be very transparent. I'm going to be very candid here. The last 2 to 2.5 years of my life have been the worst of my entire life, including when I was homeless and in poverty. So pause and take that in. Most people listening to us at this point in our conversation have assumed that, well, Joe's got it made. He's written 80 books, he's got 15 albums, he's been in 17 movies, he's on Will's show, he travels around the world pre-pandemic, and he's rich and famous and blah, 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 blah. So here I am saying, Now, wait a minute, the last 2.5 years have been the worst of my life. First of all, I went through a divorce that I thought was going to be easy and effortless because I basically was offering the farm and just walking away. But instead, it began a persecution of my life and business that was torturous. During that same period, my father died. My father was a light. And at 93, it was expected, but at the same time, it's a hard thing to take. One of my family members attempted suicide right after that. My best friend developed a cancer and died during the same period. I also got into a new relationship with somebody who developed neural Lyme disease and basically fell to the ground and was pretty close to being on her deathbed. And I was taking care of her while going through the divorce, while grieving, while trying to operate a business and still traveling to places like Russia and Ukraine and Italy. And of course, a pandemic shows up, which wipes out my biggest source of income. And so I go through lockdown and start trying different things as well. And during this period, Will, there were days I did not want to live. There were days when I questioned everything, including my sanity. And throughout them all, I would put on a happy face, make a 1-minute video for Instagram, turn it off, and then deal with me again. And during this time, I know all the techniques. I know Ho'oponopono. I know the law of attraction. I know self-esteem, inner work. I know all of these tapping. Like you, there's a lot of tools that you can use. And still was going through all of this. So I turned to Stoicism. In Stoicism, those people, Seneca and Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, they went through far worse times than what you and I go through. It was dastardly, it was unimaginable tragedy and terror that they went through. And they turned within and worked on their mindset and worked on what they could control and what they couldn't control. And it helped. I remember Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, and he had written this to himself, but he said, if it's endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. And I'd wake up and say, okay, can I endure it? Because I'm going to court or I'm doing, they're ransacking my business and looking at every piece of paper and needing me to explain things. And it's just agonizing and exhausting and emotional and expensive. Can I endure it? I don't want to endure it, but that wasn't the question. Can I? Yeah, I can endure it. Well, then shut up and go do it. So I learned one day at a time, it's all fine. One day at a time. When our mind starts thinking about next week or next year or next month, even today with people still going through the pandemic, they're worried about the future. Bring all of our power back to the moment. In fact, spiritually, we should bring it back to this minute, this second. But if you can just focus on today, you're good for today. We got today. That was the first thing I learned. The second thing I learned is that focus on the future. Keep stating intentions, keep stating what you want to create, and keep taking actions to create it. And the third thing is constantly keep clearing. Keep doing Ho'oponopono, keep clearing myself so I can somehow, some way, as soon as possible, put an end to the persecution, to the tragedy, to the unlimited expenses that are going out. As I did all of that work, I also was smart enough to know, you know what? When you need it, ask for help. And I would call a therapist or I would call a friend to help me get through this. Now, I also, and this is the last thing I'll say about this whole kind of a dark subject, because I don't want it to be seen as a dark subject. I want it to be seen in a positive light. And this is the point. I ended up looking at my divorce and relabeling it. I didn't tell the court system this, but between me and the divine, I called it my empowerment training. It was my empowerment training because I had been so willing just to give away everything. I was playing the nice guy, which is typically what I've done personality-wise throughout my life. Nothing wrong with being a nice guy, as long as you still protect yourself. And so I needed to be the nice guy who set boundaries up. And as a result of doing that, I found a strength and developed a strength I didn't even know I had. And so this is why I'm saying some of the challenges we go through, including what you talked about with your big mission here, I think are there for a very positive, nurturing, encouraging, even miraculous reason. It's to develop something in you that maybe wasn't developed more fully. It's a latent power. My biggest example is Hercules. You know, if Hercules, the traditional Hercules in mythology, had he just ate ice cream or went to Denny's every morning and had no real challenges in his life, we wouldn't know him at all. But because he had challenges, he had to develop himself, which we now know for the superhuman power, the superhuman accomplishments, but the challenges brought that out of him. Challenges are good.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you for sharing. And I think it's admirable for so many reasons. One, because a lot of people, and I, for one, years ago, used to look at people in your position and be like, yeah, they've got their shit together. They never have any issues. They never have any challenges. But like you say, there's challenge, there's support, and you can use those to grow. And it's a much more empowering way of looking at things, which is fantastic. There's this, I could speak to you for hours and hours and hours, Joe. And maybe we'll have another conversation at some point in the future. But what I would like to do is just talk a little bit about money for 5 or 8 minutes or so. Like I say, multiple books on money you've written. So I'm not going to read them all. People can go and research them. Like you say, 74, 80 odd books that you've written. But I believe I'm right in saying that you've got 7 money principles around money, or certainly one of your books talks about 7 principles. And there was something I heard you say once, which I believe that you got taught or learned from someone else around what the purpose of money is, which I really loved. So if we could just touch on that for a bit, for the people that right now are looking to improve their financial situation, that'd be great.
Yeah, I love talking about money because I wrestled with it for the longest time and really had to find out the ins and outs of how it works. But the way I talk about money is not about investments or banking or the finance side. I talk about the psychological side. I talk about the metaphysical side. And I've written several books. The Art and Science of Attracting Money is recent. Money Loves Speed is fairly recent. Attract Money Now, that's free. Your listeners, viewers can go to money or attractmoneynow.com and they can have it. It's there. So I talk about mindset. One of the things I learned is that people have beliefs about money and they have beliefs about themselves. And these two things can stop them from having money because they won't see that it's available. They won't see the opportunities, let alone jump on them, because they got judgments about money or judgments about themselves. So the very first one about money. Most people think money is the root of all, and I pause to let everybody say evil. They all said it, we know it. Interesting enough, I've been around the world with all these different countries and they have the same belief. Even the ones that might not be God-fearing or God-worshiping still somehow have taken on the belief that money is the root of all evil. And if you think about it, if you're trying to attract money and you're visualizing and affirming and everything, but you think money's evil, are you really going to want it? You're going to do something subconsciously to push it away. Or I will often ask people, do you notice that you often bring in money just in the nick of time to pay a bill? You're right down to the wire, and then suddenly something opens up. There's a sale, there's a gift, you find it, whatever. There's some money, you pay your bill. And what I point out is your subconscious mind didn't want you to have what it's called evil, but you needed to pay your bill. So it allowed you to have it for about 5 minutes. Money came in, you had to get it out of your life as fast as possible, and then you're broke again. This is revealing that money has no beliefs about you, but you have beliefs about money. So one of the big things that people need to realize is that money in and of itself is nothing. It's neutral. I've often picked up a pen, and then there's a little video of me doing this, and I would say, is this pen evil? Is this pen bad? With this pen, I could probably stab you. I could probably write a very nasty note and leave an angry comment. With this pen, I can probably write a love note or a love poem or a song or write a movie. So is it me or is it the pen? Obviously, it's me. The pen's neutral. The pen has no ability in and of itself. It's the same thing with money. The money itself is just paper and coin. We agree that it matters, it means something, but how it's used is entirely up to you. So when we strip away the emotional connotation and realize money is just a tool. And then that quote you were referring to, it's from Arnold Patton. And Arnold Patton said something I wish I had said, but he said, the sole purpose of money is to express appreciation. The sole purpose of money is to express appreciation. And I so loved it. When I first heard it, I was skeptical and I thought, oh, come on. Then I thought, well, wait a minute. When I write the check to pay the phone bill, I am grateful to have a phone. When I write a check for food, well, I'm grateful to have groceries. When I write a check for utilities, well, I'm grateful to have power. And I started to realize, wait a minute, money is a way to say thank you. Money is a way to say thank you. And when you flip it and you move away from evil and you start thinking, well, money is a great tool. It helps you fulfill your dreams. It's a way of showing appreciation. Now there's a glow around money. Now money is good. Money is even spiritual. And then the other aspect is about themselves. Most people don't think they're enough. They don't think they're good enough. They don't think they're lovable enough. They don't think they're likable enough. They don't think they're smart enough. Their self-esteem is a little lower than what it could be. And I, being homeless and in poverty, know that because mine was dropped down to the ditch. You have to build that up. And you can build that up by looking at your life and looking at the good things that you've done or the good things that have happened to you. Or you can use the mirror technique. You can get in front of the mirror and start talking about what you like about yourself. I remember looking in the mirror and not liking what I saw, but I remember saying, well, I got these dimples, and people would always tell me throughout my life how much they loved my dimples. And I would think, well, I guess dimples are good. I would go, I guess that's where I can start. And then I would think what people would say my eyes and the color of them were beautiful. I remember a woman saying I had bedroom eyes. And I thought, I don't even know what that means, but it sounds good. And so you start to, you bring some humor to it, just like I was chuckling. But I would say those two areas, realizing money's neutral, and by extension, it's actually a tool to fulfill your dreams. Like you have a big mission. Money enables you to fulfill your life mission for all of us. Money's a great tool. And then to realize you do deserve it. You are good enough. You are likable enough. You are lovable enough. Yeah, we all want to improve. We all want to change. We all want to morph into something better, what we perceive as better. But right now, just as we are, we can appreciate ourselves. And I'm not talking about an ego self-love. I'm talking about just nurturing your own being kind to yourself. That's where it all begins. So I would say all of that. And if your listeners, watchers, people that are tuned in want the book, go to attractmoneynow.com. They can have it free.
Yeah. Well, we'll put the link in the show notes so people can go and access straight to that. So I've got 3 questions. I'm mindful of time. I've got 3 questions from people that are some fantastic questions. There's lots of fantastic questions, but I picked 3. One of them I'm going to ask, because there'll be people listening to this for the first time and there'll be the skeptics, right? You and I know there'll be the skeptics.
That's all right.
And they always talk about law of attraction. They go, okay, well, it makes sense. And I get it. And I want my car, or I want the business, or I want the gold medal, or I want this and I want that. I get it. But then something that's been on a lot of people's mind over the last year is the situation with COVID, right? And people go, well, how has the whole world all been thinking the same thing at the same time to bring on COVID? So what's your answer to that?
There is group beliefs. There are group beliefs that go on just like there's individual beliefs. And I was mentioning earlier how different cultures have different belief systems. I spoke in Poland several times. I loved Poland. And I remember, I think it was the first time, I was talking about empowerment and I was talking about dreams coming true. And of course, I'm sounding like a full-blooded American in Poland. And the guy, one of the guys in the front row stood up, a young man, and he came to me and he says, "Is it true?" And I said, "Is what true?" He said, "Is it really true that I could be more, that I could have more?" And he was so innocent. He was like a little puppy. And I realized Poland had been controlled by other countries. They grew up with them being under the thumb of Russia, for example. And so they had this inbuilt belief that they couldn't be free, They're starting to be free. They probably are at this point, but when I was there, they were just breaking free of a concept. That's a whole country. So yes, we can all have shared beliefs. When I went to Russia the first time, which was over 10 years ago, and they dropped their money in my hand, and I'm looking at their money, to me, it wasn't real because it looks like Monopoly play money, but the whole country would kill for that because they had the shared belief. Now, most everybody has been brought up as a victim. It's very rare to find a person in almost any culture that starts out in a Buddha-like way, where they have enlightened parents and they come into the world being enlightened and then pretty much stay uncontaminated. Pretty rare, which means that all of us have been fear-based, gossip-based, insecurity-based, afraid of everything and everybody. So we have a shared belief in victimhood. That shared belief in victimhood creates and recreates problems that are shared. It was, I think, 100 years ago, there was a pandemic again. I think they called it the Spanish flu, even though it was from France, as I remember. Hundreds of millions of people died. There were so many people dying, they were stacking them on the front porch of people's homes to be picked up when the undertaker could get to it. I mean, this is preposterous. The rule of thumb is, if we don't awaken, we recreate our problems. If we don't create individually, you can note that most people have the same problem over and over and over again. Until you get the problem and understand why it's there and release the belief that's creating it, it keeps coming back.
Yeah.
It happens culturally with a pandemic. It was over. We did it before. It'll happen again. In fact, I mentioned the Stoics. Marcus Aurelius lived through a pandemic that lasted 10 years. He died in it.
Yeah, I've got to admit, another shit. I'm a huge fan of Stoicism. I read the Daily Stoic daily, and then you've got meditations, and there's lots of different ways of introducing Stoicism to your life. Thank you, Sonia. That was a question from Sonia Pires. A great question. We've had a question from Denise Mortimer, which we've not really spoken about vibration, but vibration is an element of what we bring into this. We've not really gone there today, but Denise asked how to maintain a vibration, sort of optimal vibration of alignment as often as possible.
Which is a great question. We talk a lot about vibration, but I think what we need to do to make people understand it is talk more in scientific terms. And this is a time where I would give some gratitude to science, because they talk about how the brain works. And what we want is to have the dopamine firing off. We want the happy chemicals in our brain going off, because we will feel it in our body, which in law of attraction circles, they'll say that's a higher vibration. But if you're not in the law of attraction circle and somebody says, hey, I'm feeling high vibe, or I need to raise my vibes, you won't know what they're talking about. What they're talking about is releasing the happy chemicals in their brain so they feel better, so they feel optimistic, so they feel happy, they feel euphoric. And it's that feeling of a higher energy, of a better well-being, that helps them not only attract what they want esoterically, but have the physical means to take the actions to co-create what they want. And so each person needs to look at what makes them happy. And that could be dancing for one, skipping for another, swimming for somebody else, listening to great music, going for a walk, skydiving for somebody else. You know, there's probably all kinds of things. Watching movies, for me, reading lots of great books would do it. Listening to great songs, playing music will do it. Taking trips can do it. Each person needs to look at what makes you happy, what makes your heart skip, what makes you passionate, what makes you alive, and do more of that.
Absolutely. I'm a huge advocate for creating what I call a self-love list. And it's like, what are the things that you love doing by yourself? But then also, what do you love doing with other people? So I've grown up playing hockey my whole life. I stopped playing last year. And so playing hockey was something I love doing with other people. Something I love doing by myself was going and watching sunrises and it's making sure you do it. And I've got a whole list of things, and I like to go through them and just see how often am I doing the things that I love doing. So there you go, Denise. And thank you, Joe, for sharing that. This question I really love, and you're going to love this one as well. So this question is from Christina Osborne. And she said, how do you go after things? I think what she means by going after things is use the law of attraction, but remain in the spirit of detachment and abundance.
And you're right. I do love that question. It's a question I've heard a lot ever since I wrote my book, The Attractor Factor. The Attractor Factor came out, I think, in 2005, and that was the book that got me invited into the movie The Secret. And in it, I talked about a 5-step formula for attracting what you want. And I'll go through it real quick so people aren't scratching their heads going, what is he talking about? In The Attractor Factor, I said there's 5 steps. The first is to know what you don't want, because you use that answer to go to the second step, what you do want. The third is to get clear, and that's what we've been talking about a lot. The fourth is to nebulize your goal, and that's a nod to Neville Goddard, who deeply influenced me. He's an author who talked about not just seeing yourself receiving whatever it is that you want to attract, but to actually feeling as if you already did it, past tense. You're already living it. And then the fifth is let go while taking inspired action. And I would get more questions about that, which is similar to this question here. How do you let go of what you want when you really want it? You know, that's a version of it. And what we're talking about here is attachment. We don't want to be attached to the things we say we would like to experience. In my book, The Attractor Factor, I said, after every goal or intention, add the phrase, this or something better. This will help you detach. Because if you say, I really have to have this Mercedes SL 200 and red and blah, 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 and you're going to live or die if you don't get it, you will actually prevent it from being attracted, because the underlying belief is around desperation. When you have trust in a greater power and faith in the universe or the divine or God, you can trust it to give you that or something better. So it's very important that when you state your intention, add the phrase, this or something better. And then the attitude to have is that it's coming, because if it isn't that, it's going to be something better than that. And with that kind of faith and that kind of trust, you don't have a sense of desperation. You'll just take action on whatever the inspiration or intuition or opportunity is in front of you. And over time, you realize it's coming, that or something better.
And I must admit, when I first started introducing that, the difference it made to my life was incredible, you know. And I'm a big advocate for life happens for you, not to you, and moving away from that victim mentality. And but having the belief that, oh, it's not worked out, right? Well, it's something better's happening, you know. And an exercise I get my clients to do is they draw out sort of just a graph, you know, with a y-axis and x-axis, and they plot their life, the highs and lows. And in almost every instance, the people that have had the lows, and you look at their highs, that high was directly correlated to the low. And when people realize that and they connect the dots backwards, they go, oh, right, well, if I'm in a low right now, it's great because I've got something really optimistic to look forward to and something great's on the way. So I love that. Excellent. That. Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure having the conversation with you. And I know that people listening to this are going to be absolutely loving it. And for people maybe hearing you for the first time that are thinking, this guy's incredible, where can they find more of you?
Well, first of all, thank you, Will. I love you. I love what you're doing. I love your mission. And I've greatly loved this interview. I'm not hiding. I'm all over the internet. I would say on Instagram, you might follow me because I'm posting videos once or twice or 3 times a day. And I'm there as Dr. Joe Vitale, Dr. Joe Vitale. Same on Facebook, Dr. Joe Vitale. They can get my book, Attract Money Now, at attractmoneynow.com. I have a website with lots of links called vitalelifemastery.com. So my last name, Vitale, vitalelifemastery.com. And of course, Amazon. I've got a lot of books. I've got music. I've got a lot of other stuff, but Amazon pretty much has it all. Your one-stop shopping place.
There's the advert. We'll send that to the guys over at Amazon. They can use that on a commercial. So yeah, no, thank you so much, Joe. It's been an absolute pleasure. For everyone that's been listening, go and download the book. Joe's kindly created the book, gifting you the book. We'll put the link in the show notes. Go and connect with him on social media, share your appreciation, and it's been an absolute pleasure. So Joe, thank you again. For everyone that's been listening, until next time, make it happen.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Make It Happen with Will Polston podcast. Make sure you join Will's free Facebook group, the Make It Happen community. Please support the show by subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or Google Play. Share this episode with at least one friend you think would benefit from it, and give Will a 5-star review wherever you download your podcasts. Until next time, make it happen.